So when people think about break dancing, what move do people use often that you think they don't realize is real break dancing?
It's not actually a yoga pose. It's a breakdance move.
Oh no, I was gonna say like a freeze or like a turtle, like the kind of like where you're like this and spinning. Yeah.
So I mean, you have to kind of be a little athletic to be able to break dance anyway, correct?
Of making this film was investigating the athletics behind it. I think there's like been several kind of iterations when we were developing this thing about like how hard do we lean into the fact that like this is actually like an incredibly physical thing that you have to practice. And these kids that were doing this thing practice like 8, 10 hours a day. When they weren't in school, they were like practicing and training and trying to get better because it's incredibly physical.
Hmm. But dancing is also just in general uh, physical. So I don't want it to sound like you absolutely have to be an athlete in order to explore and try and do. I mean, uh, you know, throughout this process, I tried to figure out exactly how difficult it would be for me to try a headstand. And uh, it's I can't do it in motion, but I can contort in such a way where I could do it still, like a still life, which is not technically dancing because there's very little movement, but I can get there.
So when you think about like the intersection of breaking and sports and kind of how it did come together, could one live without the other?
They live without, yeah, I think they can one can definitely live without the other. I think at its heart, breakdancing is a dance. You know what I mean? I think that this is an art form that was created by kids in Queens and in the Bronx in New York. Um, and they were dancing. They were, going to these like kung fu movies in Times Square and like seeing the moves and turning that into a dance. And there's inspiration from all over the kind of urban landscape, right? But to say that there isn't some element of that that's not competitive, I think is false. Like they were going around battling crews. Like that is a competition. You know what I mean? And I think that when you kind of add that element to it, sure, it's like that is sport. There is a winner and there is a loser,
Yeah,
and that's good.
yeah. As long as there's me versus you, which is inherent in hip hop, um, uh, that that you can't disconnect the element of competition
Yeah.
from breakdancing.
Now, I have to ask you, as people prepare themselves to watch this documentary, they got to have a playlist, right? To get themselves in the mood. So what has to be on there?
I mean, like the one that always kept coming up is Apache. I think that that's a big like seminal break. That so many hip hop records were built off of. I think that there's a lot of James Brown in there. Like you get some of those horn sections from his like Live at the Apollo album, and it's like you feel the architecture of hip hop like coming out of the speakers. I think that there's a ton. But the fun thing about breakdancing is like I'm sure you could find some like New York drill song that came out today that you could still breakdance to. You know what I mean? It's like you go to these Red Bull competitions or see the qualifying for the Olympics, and it's like it's not all just old school stuff. It's about a feeling and a heart.
But there is definitely a connection to the old school stuff that um, when you hear it, you can the discovery of the break in general in the music, it makes complete sense why we'd stop at a point in the record and extend this part so that we could just rock. So that's something that we had a good time. This kind of, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of it features information that has kind of been sitting in the back of your mind for so long about this art form, and now it's just qualified by the originators of the art form.
And my last question just has to be for folks who think they don't want to check this out or it's not for them. Why would you encourage everybody to watch this documentary?
There is a story here that people haven't heard. You might think kind of the origins of hip hop or the origins of breakdancing. And we talked about this a lot, even after the last, last year was like the 50th year of hip hop, and there was like tons of documentaries, tons of content everywhere, big concerts. We were like, maybe there aren't more stories to be told, but as we dug into this thing, it's like, oh, this is a story that really hasn't been told, and I think it'll surprise a lot of people the way that it surprised us as we were developing it.
For sure. And there is this just, it's about this single moment in time. So I think you see a lot of documentaries that try to cover the full landscape of the genre, but this one really attempts to focus on this single moment in time. And our hope is that in the future, this will be one of the sort of opening conversations around who the original create who were the creators of this art form, and where they took it and the influence that they kind of sparked worldwide with this